Hey guys, today we're talking about what it would be like to fly for a day as a normal person, a totally average hero with a very above average commute.
If you like these videos, make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're
listening from.
Are you about to fall asleep, trying to work, or on a long drive watching the sky pretend to be infinite?
So, it starts quietly.
No dramatic lightning bolt, no cake delivered by courier.
Just a soft morning, the sort that smells like toast and cool hallway air. You open a window to let the day in, and the day, very politely, lets you out. Not a leap, not even a jump.
More a decision. Your feet consider the ground, and then reconsider. The air holds you the way bathwater holds a hand. A little surprise.
A little smile, and then yes, this is fine. The first inches are everything.
The socks you forgot to match.
The faint squeak from your floorboard that now seems miles below. The slow grin you catch in the reflection of the window. A grin you'd like to borrow for the rest of your life.
You go up to shoulder height, then rooftop, pupils widening at the city's secret topography, chimneys like chess pieces, satellite dishes tilted like question marks, a rooftop tomato plant that is either heroic or delusional. You give it a
thumbs up. The tomato plant, being a professional, continues photosynthesizing. Flight isn't running in the sky. It's thinking with your whole body.
You don't flap, you intend. Forward is a suggestion your shoulders make.
Left is a lean your ribs agree to. Stopping is the art of exhaling at the correct altitude and pretending you meant to do that. You
learn quickly that pockets must zip, keys must not solo, and phones are loyal only when bribed by tight denim and good intentions. Wind combs your hair in a way that's flattering until it isn't.
You discover the quiet dignity of a beanie.
With a conscience.
The city sounds different from here.
HVAC units hum like polite whales.
A bus sighs around a corner and the sigh floats up as if relieved to be of schedule for a second.
Somewhere a kettle claks and the sound arrives divorced from its source. Just a tender yes in the air. Smells travel too. Bakery vanilla. Hot dust on sun-warmed brick. The green note of a park waking up.
You drift above a sea air vent and are nearly adopted by a cinnamon roll.
Heroism will have to wait. Pastries are. Persuasive diplomats taught dear people see you.
Some do. A balcony wave. A jogger who doubles back and then pretends he dropped something, which is a cute way to admit awe. One kid points so hard the pointing becomes a posture.
You wave with the modesty of a cloud. The rulebook writes itself as you go. Don't hover. Outside windows. Don't startle pigeons purely for science. Never land on a rooftop herb garden without asking the roseberry first.
If someone's laundry line flaps at you, flap back exactly once to be courteous and then move on before you become a laundry story. You try speed.
Speed tries you back. It's loud and it steals noticing. So you choose drift the Goldilocks.
Place where you can read the day's handwriting. You trace the river's cold breath where it threads between buildings. You follow a street's invisible current, the way warm air rises of sunlit asphalt and lifts your knees half an inch without asking. You hover over crosswalks and watch little negotiations happen. Nods, steps, the orchestra of strangers making room for each other. From above, the choreography looks generous. Clouds tempt you like sofas in a furniture store you can't afford.
You approach carefully.
They look solid, and they are emphatically not.
The first touch is a cool kiss, and then your sleeves whisper, "We're going to remember this." And they do. By being damp for the next 20 minutes.
You circle instead, flying the soft perimeter where sunlight catches on vapor and pretends
to be woven.
Inside the cloud the world is pale and close.
Outside it is bright and far.
You choose the seam and draw slow circles on it with your day. Dobby why late morning. You've learned gear.
Backpack snug. Straps short. A bottle of water in a side pocket because hydration doesn't care how heroic you are. Sunglasses are fine until they aren't. You develop the tiny Midday gesture that nudges them back into the exact place where gravity gives up.
You practice landing without drama, feet first. Knees kind. A little bounce. The kind of touchdown that makes an old dog glance up and decide you've always been able to do that. Errands become folklore. The post office is suddenly downhill both ways.
You carry a parcel like you're protecting an egg, and the sky agrees to be smooth about it.
At street level, you walk through a door like everyone else because normal is the best disguise. And besides,
doors are underrated. The clerk asks, "Busy morning?"
And you say, "Drifty," which is honest in a way that feels like telling a secret to someone who won't use it against you. Afternoon brings small bravado. You try the long arc over the park, following the tree line where the air is cooler. and smells like new leaves.
Crows shadow you for a minute, purely to audit your snack potential.
You have no snacks.
They file a complaint by being loud, and then forget you exist because a shiny wrapper exists. And priorities are priorities. A frisbee rises toward you as if auditioning to be a UFO.
You give it space so it can complete its narrative about teamwork. Below, you start to understand altitude like you understand seat heights. There's one that makes conversation easy. Too high and the city is a map with feelings removed. Too low and you're a rumor with elbows. Mid-roof line is perfect. You can hear laughter as laughter, not noise.
You can smell basil on a sill and feel the day decide whether it will warm or cool next.
You learn the city's exhale, that subtle release around 3 o'clock when lunch is over and the afternoon hasn't asked anything difficult yet. Not everything is poetry.
There is wind that shoves. There is a seagull with leadership ambitions. There is a rogue napkin that tries to become your cape and fails.
Your arms get tired from not using them, which feels like a personal attack. You eat a late sandwich on
a water tower step because even heroes need mayonnaise. And you stare at your shoes dangling over 100 afternoons of people doing people things, emails, errands, a nap with a book face down on a chest. You feel lucky to be above it and also very much part of it. Flight doesn't separate you.
It just gives you better angles for gratitude. Near evening, the light turns honey-colored and the city forgives itself for earlier. You trace the same route you took in the morning and it's brand new. Windows glowing. Dinner smells negotiating in alleyways. A saxophone practicing a scale that will be right tomorrow. You hover over your own block for a moment longer than you should, not as a spy, but as a person practicing the art of returning.
You lower slowly, like a thought you don't want to drop.
The ground receives you with its usual competence. Your keys are still in your zipped pocket. Your hair is telling a story you didn't authorize and you forgive it. Inside, the sink is the same sink. The kettle is thrilled to be important.
You lean against the counter and the day leans back. Flying did not fix you because you were not broken, but it cleaned the windows. Ordinary air in your kitchen feels like a friend who brought soup. You write a tiny list for tomorrow: bread, batteries, maybe a better beanie, and you smile.
Because the sky will still be there when the list is done.
You won't need to race it.
You'll ask, and it will say yes, and you will go, not to escape the world, but to see it properly, one soft circle at a time. Midday arrives almost without announcing itself. The way a kind friend arrives at your door with fruit and doesn't make you change out of your slippers.
The light relaxes. The air loosens its shoulders. And you remember that flying isn't a stunt so much as a way to keep company with the day.
You step outside. Consider the sky like you'd consider a familiar staircase. And up you go, no drumroll, no stern conversation with physics, just a gentle agreement between ankles and atmosphere. Your second ascent is smoother than your first. Muscle memory has signed the lease. You choose an easy height, mid-roofline again, where conversation from balconies rings clear and the city still has a face. The breeze has warmed. It smells faintly of stone, warm plastic from sunlit playgrounds, basil from a windowsill that's taking its gardening career very seriously. You drift past a building whose bricks hold heat like old tea, and you can feel
the temperature graze your shins, your knees, your thighs, like walking through sunlight that has learned to float.
It's strangely domestic up here.
Laundry snaps its soft vowels from lines. A tiny radio on a fire escape sings a song you almost know.
A crocheted blanket naps on the back of a chair and makes you want to apologize for waking it. Practice becomes play. You sketch wide circles with your hips, draw soft figure eights that make your spine feel like a sentence unspooling. Left is a shoulder. Right is a thought. Stopping is an apology you make to momentum, and it accepts.
You try a glide with
your eyes closed for exactly the length of a breath and open them to find the world obedient and perfectly where you left it. The sky rewards gentleness with precision. The more softly you ask, the more exactly it answers. You experiment with errands. A book due back at the library becomes a pilgrimage of 3 slow turns across town.
You tuck the novel inside your jacket, like a secret, and cruise the cooler path, the shaded sides of streets, over the scene where river air wanders inland.
At red lights you hover, respectful as any cyclist, and you wave at the crossing guard because authority deserves a salute even when you're technically between lanes of air. At the library you land in the alley, smooth as butchering toast, and enter by the side door because flying should never make you forget about doors. The book goes through the slot with a soft, triumphant clack, and you feel absurdly heroic about not accruing a fine.
Outside again. The sky waits no tapping foot, No crossed arms.
It knows you're practicing leaving and returning, and it
Approves. You discover the physics of stacks.
A paperback is a bell if you let the wind play it.
A bottle with a cap not quite tight will audition for the role of comet.
A plastic fork thinks it's a weather vane. You learn the precise angle that lets a sandwich exist in peace. And you bless whoever invented the zipper, because the zipper is, in fact, the patron saint of flight. You chew midair with a kind of reverence, tasting bread and mustard and altitude, all at once, and realize that every bite is a little picnic the day snuck into your pocket. Birds become colleagues. Pigeons are unionized.
They ignore you unless you threaten to become interesting.
Swallows are chaos in a good mood, laughing in cursive.
Gulls are managers who want to see your plan.
Crows notice everything and give you a grade. Today, a crow FLI's parallel for a while, glancing at you with academic disappointment until you tuck a loose strap and it decides you're at least trainable.
It peels off with a single nonchalant flap that says, in fluent sarcasm, "Do better, intern." You promise to try. Clouds, earlier damp and theatrical, have drifted higher.
What remains at your level are their shadows, cool rectangles, and oval lakes moving lazily across streets and roofs. You surf one as it floats over a square where a violinist is tuning up.
The first notes climb toward you like ladders.
From below, music is something you stand inside. From above, it's a thing you watch bloom.
You hover for the duration of a melody you don't know and clap with the soft percussion of a person who can't be seen but hopes to be felt. Etiquette expands in the afternoon.
You learn to give skylights a respectful arc, to rise above rooftop dinners as if your shadow wears shoes and you've taught it how to tiptoe.
You wave at painters on scaffolds and receive, in return, the universal thumbs up of people doing careful work.
You discover that if you linger above a community garden, someone will eventually look up and offer you a tomato with a gesture that says, "I don't know the rules, but this feels correct." You decline, not because you are proud, but because gravity deserves fewer temptations. Once passing the river, you follow a breeze that slides along the water like a polished thought. It smells of tin and fish and the memory of storms. You drop low until your reflection is a companion wobbly, sincere, more patient than a mirror. The current writes your outline and then edits it. Writes and edits, the way a day revises a mood. A dragonfly needles past, iridescent and busy. You consider applying for an internship with it, but the position seems to demand some written enlightening. You think briefly about secrecy. Are you trying to hide this? Do you want to be the local rumor, the quiet headline, the person? In a kindly conspiracy with the sky, you realize you prefer the middle. Let the children point. Let the dog decide you're a distant frisbee. Let the adults categorize you as some new sport so they can go back to their errands. You don't need to be a superhero. The miracle is not power, it's permission. You are allowed to be here. You are allowed to see kindly from above. Afternoon heat gathers on brick and rises in soft exclamations. You pass through them like a person walking through compliments, grateful, a little bashful, a little taller after each one. Your shadow grows friendlier, less stark, and you realize shadows are simply proof that light has chosen you for geometry. You angle toward a quieter part of town where rooftops are sloped and old, and the air smells like laundry soap and lilacs. A tabby cat watches you from a gable with the exact expression of a librarian at closing time. You nod. The cat blinks. A treaty is signed. You try a nap. Because why should the ground own all the naps? You find a patch of shade on the lee side of a clock tower where the air makes a small, loyal eddy. You don't sleep. Not really. You rest the way leaves rest attached. Away, gently useless. It teaches you a different lesson about flight.
That it isn't always movement.
Sometimes it's permission to be still in a place where stillness doesn't usually live. When you drift away again, your shoulders feel like cupboards someone organized while you weren't looking toward late afternoon. Wind gathers its gossip. Gusts shove and then apologize. You accept both. You learn to angle your knees like heels and to trust your hips more than your hands. You ride a turbulent patch the way you'd ride out a conversation that got a little loud, steady voice. Soft eyes, no sudden changes.
A billboard up here becomes philosophy. The same ad that seemed
bossy from the bus stop is just color and curve from the sky. You pass it and it lets you go without comment. Errands continue. A parcel picked up. A message delivered to a friend on a rooftop across town, one of those conversations that is mostly smiling, and a shared look at the horizon. You don't stay long. Rooftops are like kitchens. Linger too much, and you become part of the chore list. You lift, wave, and the wind edits your goodbye into something elegant. Evening begins to assemble itself out of gold and longer shadows. You trace your morning route in reverse, amazed that the same corners can feel like different countries when the light changes.
The bakery's windows fork in soft squares. A bar's door thumps open and the day sighs into night one patronat. A time. You pass over a basketball court where the ball becomes a punctuation mark in the sentence of laughter.
A streetlight flickers once, decides to be brave, and remains on when you finally descend toward home. The landing is muscle memory, kind knees remembering kindness, souls remembering trust. Your doormat receives you with its usual spelling. Error of a welcome.
You like it more for being wrong.
Indoors, your body notices gravity again, like an old tune it still knows the words to. The shower is a weather front you control. Warm water convinces your shoulders you are human, which you are gloriously, even when the sky would like to claim you as one of its hobbies. You eat something simple and absolutely perfect toast with a sentimental amount of butter, tea that remembers how you like it. While you eat,
you write a small list of what you learned, that turning is kindness to momentum,
that clouds are damn comedians, that pockets are serious business, that waving is a spell, that high is not the same as far,
that normal people can be miracles without becoming announcements.
You had better be near,
and a doodle of a crow.
Grading you with a B+ before bed. You open the window again. Night air comes in like quiet music.
Somewhere distant, a plane draws a careful line between two points that matter to someone.
You do not envy it.
You have a different map now, made of valleys of wind and corners of warmth, and the exact latitude of a certain rooftop tomato plant. You yawn the yawn of a person successfully tired.
If tomorrow allows, you will go up again. Not to leave the
world, but to love it from another angle. Slower than a hurry, faster than a nap, exactly as high as kindness. Evening arrives the way a dimmer switch arrives, no click, just a slow kindness spreading across the streets.
You stand at the window with a mug that has decided to be purely decorative, and the sky looks back with that, well, expression it wears when it's ready to be shared.
You don't make a speech. You finish one last sip, set the cup down like a promise to return, and step outside. The first few inches of lift feel easier than breathing. You race past the lamplight where the air changes from day warm to night cool, a soft border that brushes
your cheeks and suggests you pull your hood up. You don't.
You want to feel the night the way you felt the morning directly. Without translation, the city is gentler now. Color turns to tone.
Windows declare dinners in small rectangles.
Steam narrates with white commas over restaurant roofs. Bicycles click past in pairs like polite metronomes.
Up here, the soundscape is a blanket. Softer buses, softer laughter.
Dogs with evening opinions that get folded away after a single bark.
You choose the familiar mid-roof height and drift along the avenue where trees make little cathedrals over the sidewalks. Their leaves have different perfume after dark, less green, more cool, as if they've traded their daytime shirts for something linen and loose. You find the night currents quickly. They are slower than the day's breezes, more deliberate, as if the air itself has put on slippers. Over brick, the warmth rises in gentle exhalations. Over the park, the air sinks, smelling faintly of damp earth and iron benches. Over the river, there's a low lane that moves like a quiet conveyor belt. You step onto it with a tilt of the shoulders and let it carry you past the footbridge where someone plays guitar to nobody and everybody at once. Each chord arrives diffused and kind, as if the strings have decided to hum rather than ring. Light behaves differently with you now.
Street lamps bloom soft halos that you float through, briefly gilded, then plain again. Toll lights write commas that stretch and soften if you follow their roads from above. In one courtyard, a string of patio bulbs throws polite gold onto a
table where four friends eat soup and discuss something that will not matter tomorrow, which is exactly why it matters now. You keep your distance. Darkness makes privacy feel thinner, and you want to be a neighbor, not a headline. The rulebook updates quietly. High over windows, wider arcs over patios, and a small salute for anyone who looks up. You are both part of the night and careful not to be the loudest part. Clouds gather as if agreeing to meet.
They aren't thick enough to hide the moon. They are simply accessories, shawls the sky drapes and undrapes. You circle one and it gives you a kiss of cool damp, a quick reminder that romance has texture. Your sleeves take the note. You forgive them for cooling your wrists. A bat appears, edits the air with brisk strokes, and vanishes into the version of darkness that you can't read yet.
You whisper, "Good hunting," because night makes you polite to things you do not understand. You try quiet speed. a pace that moves but doesn't cut sound in half. It turns out to be the perfect way to read evening's handwriting. You
pass a bookstore closing late.
The owner holds a stack of novels like firewood and turns the sign with solemn ceremony. You pass a pool of light where a couple argues so gently it's almost choreography. Their hands make small apologetic circles that say we'll fix this, we will.
You pass a cat making a patrol.
You salute the cat. The cat accepts the salute and continues to rule above a block of row houses. An elderly man waters geraniums that can't possibly need it at this hour. He tilts his head, spots you, and raises the watering can like a toast.
You return the gesture and feel blessed in a secular way.
You think, for a moment, about secrecy again, how much you owe the sky, how little the sky asks in return. It wants you to be gentle, it wants you to wave, it wants you to come back without leaving a mess. That seems fair. You aim for the river because the river is a night mirror. The city turns itself into punctuation on its surface, long dashes of light, deliberate semicolons of reflection under the arches, a run-on sentence of gold and white that you hover above until your shadow becomes an underline. The breeze down. It tastes like pennies and rain story. A barge moves upriver with the patience of a librarian closing a heavy book.
You glide alongside for half a minute, nodding to the single crew member out on deck who is eating an apple, as if the apple were the whole point of the evening. Rain considers the evening, and participates in a limited way, just a handful of exploratory
drops that write their brief opinions across your forehead. You welcome them.
Night rain is a secret handshake between air and skin.
The city darkens one shade under the drizzle.
Reflections double.
Footsteps become deliberate.
You climb a touch to stay in the dry scene between showers and streetlight halos, then descend
again because the smell after rain is the smell of yes. A rooftop party catches your eye, not the noise there isn't much, but the way people glow when they're lit by fairy lights and friendship.
You circle wide, so wide you are more idea than person, and you let their laughter pass through you like warm air.
The DJ plays something with a soft spine.
Someone drops ice. Someone opens a bottle, and the cork becomes a small star for exactly 1 second. You realize flying at night is not about seeing more.
It's about agreeing to see less and letting that be enough.
You don't need detail when the shapes are so honest. You test landing in the dark, because you know you'll want to someday.
The trick is to pick light first, ground second.
You choose a quiet, empty car park with one lamp and come down through the circle of brightness like a coin in a well.
Knees soft, soles sure. You touch down with the modesty of a thought finishing itself.
The asphalt radiates heat left over from the day.
It feels like standing on a memory.
You walk 3 steps for no reason other than to feel walking, because
walking at night holds a different conversation than walking at noon.
Then you lift again. One smooth breath, the lamp briefly a halo under your feet. Hunger finds you on a warm backdraft from a late kitchen.
You negotiate with an updraft and arrive beside a kebab shop where the sign flickers just enough to be charming. Inside, a cook in a spotless apron looks at you the way people look at weather accepting, mildly curious, uninterested in interfering.
You order chips and something that admits to garlic.
You eat on a stair, feet a little of the ground because
you can't help it, and the steam paints your cheeks.
You giggle at the ridiculous joy of being exactly here. Exactly this, back up. The city is quieter now. The kind of quiet that is not absence but rest. A bus glides through its route like a bedtime story being read for the 100th time. A taxi
makes a small decision at a corner and the indicator ticks like a metronome too shy to let the band.
Somewhere, a fox crosses a road like a rumor. You adjust your pace to match the rhythm of things that work. Streetlights changing. Elevators breathing behind the walls of tall buildings. The moon slipping behind a cloud because even the moon
enjoys a costume change. You practice returning the way one practices bowing, not to be seen, but to make the moment tidy.
Your block appears familiar as your own sentence.
You circle once to say good night to the tomato plant still heroic, still undecided about becoming a salad. You pass the top of your stairwell and feel the air cool where it pulls by the railing. You descend in the slowest spiral you own, a corkscrew made of patience, and your feet meet the steps like old friends falling into step mid-conversation, indoors. You become human again with the domestic spells. Lights low, kettle on, a towel.
For your hair that smells faintly of laundry day. The mirror returns your face with the blush the wind left there.
You are pleased to discover you look like someone who is outside in the best possible way.
You sit by the window while the city continues its soft arithmetic and sip something that has the color of moonlight through wood. Notes from a neighbor's piano arrive politely through the wall. You count along, not to correct, but to keep company. Before bed, one more look at the sky.
It looks back with a professional calm.
We did well, it says, without words.
You agree.
Your body is the good kind of tired, the kind that hums like a lamp on the lowest setting. You make a small list in your head for tomorrow, not chores, just permissions.
Find the cool lane above the river earlier. Wave at the man with the watering.
Can.
Practice quiet speed.
Remember a snack. Remember wonder. Put the beanie where you can actually find it. You close the window, and the room holds the day the way hands cup water carefully, gratefully. Some of it is keeping on purpose.
The world outside keeps breathing. You keep breathing with it.
And
sleep comes like a landing done right. Knees soft, shoulders easy, all the way down, with the sky still in your pockets and the ground happy to have you back.
the night keeps its promise a little longer, and you wake before the alarms do the kind of waking that feels like someone tapped your shoulder with a feather and whispered, "The hour is thin, there's a quiet to PI dawn that even midnight can't manage, the city not just resting, but suspended, like a breath held between two thoughts." You pad to the window, sip the last room temperature inch of yesterday's water, and feel the sky noticing you. You notice it back. A window latch, a small nod, and the cool air moves in, polite as a librarian. Outside, the stairs are tender with dew. Your shoes make a sound like soft punctuation. You don't so much launch as lean shoulders, remembering the angle, ribs remembering. The suggestion, and the air hums its agreeable note under you. Up past the sleepy lamplight, up to that familiar mid-roof lane, and then a little higher because the city is wearing a shawl of mist, and you want to see its stitching. Fog has poured in the low places. Streets become slow rivers of white. Rooftops become islands with chimneys like small lighthouses. You drift along the fog's edge the way you'd skim a shoreline, toes nearly grazing the surface if toes were allowed to be metaphors. Sound behaves differently in this hour. It travels farther and softer, like a story told under blankets. From somewhere blocks away, a single bean lit, set down carefully. The whisper of a broom, the cluck of a pedestrian crossing even though no one is watching. A milk truck sighs, and the sound arrives with the shape of its sigh intact. A bakery door opens, and the fork takes the smell of yeast and carries it as a blessing to anyone awake enough to receive it. You accept it. You say thank you to the air in your head, and that feels correct. Rules feel clearer before sunrise. Give rooftops more space. People dream closer to the surface then. Keep wide of the tall buildings that inhale early workers. If you see beacon lights on the far horizon, you turn away without making a fuss. Skies are cooperative public spaces, and you are the pedestrian, not the runway. You salute the unseen tower with two fingers to your brow because politeness has altitude too. A plane draws its thin silver idea far above, and you feel small in the right way. You follow a power line corridor east because it writes an honest sentence across the neighborhoods. Birds are already staging there, silhouettes with pockets of breath, waiting for the light to grant them permission to become opinions. A robin uncorks a first note and then remembers the rest of the song all at once. It tumbles out of the throat. Like marbles, you hover at a distance where you are accepted as a weird cloud, and you let the chorus write on you. If there is a religion of mornings, it is this. You don't need to believe to be blessed by it. Over the river now, Fork sits low, the surface a velvet table where reflections have decided to sleep in. A heron stands midstream on legs too elegant to be structural. You take the long curve with the current and feel the cool lane the water makes, a path that knows how to go forward without hurrying. Every so often, a fish breaks the surface and punctuates the sentence with a brief circle. The circle expands and becomes memory. Yours. The river's no arguments about ownership. From here, the horizon is a slow watercolor of oranges and dusty pinks and a blue that remembers night, but is done arguing for it. You climb, not to be first to see the sun, but to watch the city change planes. Shadows unspool, edges come back. Windows, which were opinions at midnight, become eyes again. You hover by a billboard that yesterday was bossy. This morning, it's just a rectangle that catches light like anything else. You forgive it its fonts. You try stillness, true stillness, letting the air carry you exactly as much as necessary and no more. The trick is to relax the places of you that think work equals worth. Knees, yes. Jaw, yes. That stern part of the brow that tries to manage weather, yes. When you get it right, the body feels placed rather than posed. The sky, like a cat, chooses your lap in that quiet. You notice small weather under your clothes, the sleeves cool hem against your wrist. The heat your scarf has patiently kept. the inventory of muscles that have agreed to be useful without demanding applause. You drift
toward a hill that stands a little outside the tight weave of streets.
It has an old tower on top with steps that forget how to count in the middle.
Children fly kites here on days the wind remembers them. Dogs write novels here in the language of smell. You circle once and then land on the eastern slope where the
grass is slightly damp and absolutely forgiving. For a minute, you are a person on a small hill at dawn, which turns out to be the whole point of every myth about flight. Not to escape the ground,
but to return to it with pockets full of sky on the hillside. The day widens.
Commuters begin as ideas and become colleagues of gravity.
A distant train writes a graphite line along its own story. Somewhere behind you, a kettle clicks. A window opens with a sound like the clearing of a gentle throat. You sit cross-legged and eat the granola bar you put in your pocket like a responsible hero.
It tastes exactly like oats and self-respect.
An ant inspects your shoe and files a
report.
You accept the critique. Back up, because the sun has found the river and turned it into liquid gold leaf. The fort lifts in polite curtains.
You follow one, riding its top edge as it thins, until you are skimming a street you know. The newsstand, the florist's bucket brigade, the CF where the barista stamps hearts in milk without thinking about it.
You choose that height where your hello can be heard if someone is in the mood to hear it. You call down a good morning to the florist. She looks up, waves with a damp glove, and does not drop a single stem.
Competence loves company. You float to the schoolyard where early arrivals bounce like punctuation marks.
You give them a very dignified wave because children deserve spectacle that isn't showing off.
One of them points, then points again,
and then tells the others in a whisper that has no volume control. You tip an invisible hat, make one perfect slow circle, and slide away. The rulebook adds a clause. Leave people better than you found them, even if better is just a slightly bigger smile and a story for lunch. Wind picks up a little.
Not rude, just more awake. You learn to thread gusts like beads, to let one push become the beginning of a curve rather than the start of a complaint.
A delivery cyclist below makes the same choices: angle, patience, respect for physics, and you feel briefly like colleagues on different floors of the same invisible
building. You want to high-five. You high-five the idea instead. Mid-morning errands happen again because ordinary is a superpower. A letter posted, a loaf required. A quick hello to the man who waters his geraniums at odd hours. He waves his can like a flag and asks the weather for mercy. You land whenever landing is the right verb.
You take off whenever taking off is kinder to feet. You pause whenever pausing lets the world come forward and introduce itself. Why the time you turn homeward. The day has fully arrived with its low bars of plans. You fly the long way over rooftops returning to themselves, over a park deciding
which shade of green it will be, over a bus stop where two strangers will definitely be friends by Friday and do not know it yet.
You glide through one last pocket of cool air and tuck the sensation into your internal drawer labeled nice. You descend along the curve of your own street, the curvature you know exactly like your palm line, and arrive without ceremony, which is the best kind. Inside, the sink is still a sink. The kettle is still ambitious.
You set the loaf down, peel back its paper, and the kitchen becomes the whole countryside for a second.
You scribble the briefest list for later, post a message, call your friend, check the backpack zipper you promised to replace, and you smile
at the ordinary shape of it, like a kite string tying the day to a hand, and then you rest for just a moment, elbows on the sill, face in the soft square of sun that has found your wall, heart steady, mind breezy.
Flying, you realize, has taught you not that the world is big you knew, but that bigness and closeness can happen at the same time. You don't have to choose.
You can be a normal person who goes to the library and also knows where the morning fog keeps its silver. When you head back out, you will go up again. Not to prove anything, not to be seen, but because the sky is a room you're allowed to visit, and in it your thoughts slow down enough to be kind. For now, you breathe once, deeply, like someone about to say something honest, and the day, satisfied, answers back. Rain begins the way a kind conversation begins softly, with the courtesy of asking if now is a good time. You can hear it before you feel it. A thin hush across the roofs, a bright tapping in the gutters, the distant applause of a street that has been waiting all day to smell like itself. You stand at the door and think, well then, and the day thinks back, exactly.
You zip a pocket like you've learned to do. Tuck a small square of paper towel into another for reasons you won't be able to explain later, and step into the weather. as if you're stepping into a familiar room that's been rearranged. Lift is gentler in rain, or maybe your attention is edges blur. Sounds round off. The whole city wrapped in a grey sweater. You rise through the silver threads and feel each drop audition for the roll of comma on your cheeks. The air is cooler and kinder. It hands you up to the mid-roof lane without theatrics. Umbrellas bloom below like careful mushrooms, each with its own philosophy of pace. Steam climbs from vent grates in pale columns, meets the rain halfway, and
The two decide to become a soft, edible fork.
you breathe it in and your ribs say, "Thank you. That's exactly the temperature we were missing." Flying in drizzle has rules your body invents on the spot.
Fast, slow is beautiful.
Water has a way of making speed look like smudging. Second, pick your surfaces. Above brick, the air tastes mineral and warm.
Above river, it tastes like tin and green.
Third, let the drops write their Morse code on your sleeves without insisting you decode it.
You are not here to solve the rain.
You're here to be inside its handwriting for a while. You angle over the market. Tops drum their tiny songs.
The fruit stalls glow like lanterns in a grief festival.
A vendor in a bright yellow slicker looks.
Up, grins like a lighthouse, and lifts a strawberry toward the sky as if to tempt weather itself. You laugh not loud, but enough that the laugh becomes a warm pocket inside the cool air. You circle white to give them their roofline privacy and watch the way people rearrange themselves for rain. Shoulders knit, hands free to carry, conversations closer and kinder. It's the kind of day that turns errands into teams. A small gust
Tucks under your beanie and tries to collect it for research.
You negotiate by lowering your brow and promising to behave. Rooftop gardens brighten under the rinse. Basil looks smug. Tomatoes look relieved. Rosemary looks exactly the same because Rosemary is a stoic. You drift above a greenhouse where condensation beads like planets on the glass, each drop a tiny traveling lens.
Someone inside wipes a circle clear with a sleeve and waves, then goes back to repotting something that will be aromatic later in ways you'll never have language for. You pass the library atrium and cannot resist. It's bright as a greenhouse.
And smells like paper pretending to be forest.
You land at the side entrance because rain makes stores feel especially benevolent.
Inside, your shoes squeak an apology the floor accepts.
You stand beneath the high glass and watch the sky continue its soft arithmetic on the panes. Plus drop, plus drop, plus drop.
A child on the reading rug glances up and whispers to their grown-up. Clouds are watering the roof, and you decide. That is the official explanation for today.
You return a book you accidentally fell asleep on, stroke the cover like an apology, and promise to be a less horizontal reader next time. Back outside, the rain fattens to coins for a quarter hour, then returns to needles.
Your jacket learns both dialects and forgives you for the earlier square of paper towel.
You try hovering beneath the eave of a music store where a guitar has been gently tuning itself for years. The owner props the door with a rubber wedge, and the chord that leaks out is the exact chord rain would choose if it could request itself.
You float just far enough away that the sound doesn't have to work and let it settle your shoulders into their best posture. Listening, birds hold a staff meeting under a bridge and vote unanimously to be dry. A goose insists loudly that it is made of oil and therefore exempt from weather. You grant the motion because the goose has brought exhibits. A crow shelters in the curl of a gargle's wing, looks at you like a disappointed professor, and then, because teachers live for improvement, nods once when you tuck a loose strap. You consider putting approved by Crowboard on a business card you will never print. You experiment with low altitude in rain and learn the things rain is to smell. Soil writes its autobiography. Brick shares its recipes.
Laundry becomes
a travelling opera.
A coffee shop exhausts sighs, and the air near it turns to caramel and warmth. You dip into that cloud and pretend you're a croissant calling on a rack flaky, dignified, ready for admiration.
A bus rolls by and leaves a wake of wet street that smells like the word city. You write your name in it with your shadow.
And then let the next car erase the evidence. The river is all graphite and silk, surface riddled delicately by the drops.
You fly just above it and feel the cool lane it constantly drafts, even on days like this. The bridge girders hum a low.
Practical note you can't hear on dry days because dryness carries hurry with it.
Rain carries patience. You match that patience and become, for a few minutes, an accent mark over water, a tiny curved note. Hunger arrives the way weather does on radar visible in advance if you know how to look.
You land under an awning that smells like vinyl and steam and consider your choices. The diner up the block wins because its windows fork exactly the way a human wants them to.
Inside, You order soup, and the soup arrives with a kind of moral authority only soup possesses. You hold the spoon like a ceremony. You look out at your patch of sky, and it looks back like a friend occupying the other end of the boot.
Steam fogs your glasses and you decide to let it. For a moment, the whole world is soft focus except the warmth in your mouth, back into it. The rain has thinned to a lace you can see through. You take off the way the second verse takes of familiar, a little richer.
You travel the quieter streets now, the ones where trees meet over the middle, and the cars slow automatically because the road itself has become a corridor. Leaves hold beads of water like fine jewelry, and then, every so often, surrender them to your shoulders with a polite tap. You whisper hello to a maple. You're doing great to a birch. I see you to a small, proud sapling lashed to a stake. You think about all the little equipment changes flying in rain suggests.
Gloves thin enough to feel the world.
But not so thin they become an argument. A pocket for a folded cap that will not attempt to become a kite. A cloth for glasses if you ever choose to be a person who needs one. You remember to check the zipper you promised to replace and add actually replace zipper to the moving list in your head. Your life has not become complicated. It has become attentive. Storm talk flirts with the day and then decides this is not the hour for drama. Thunder speaks once far away like a parent calling through a house, and the house answers. We're fine. You're grateful.
You're not ready for heroics. You're ready for water that teaches you how soft everything
can be.
You ride a broad, slow circle over a square where the puddles have arranged themselves like lakes on a map.
Children in small boats colonize them with fierce joy.
Their guardians perform the ancient adult ritual of pretending to be dismayed while being secretly delighted. You bless the puddles for their service and move on. Late afternoon. The rain rests.
Streets glow the way cast iron glows when oil has been seasoned into it. Dark, luminous, faithful. You can hear individual wheels.
A cyclist's chain clinks. Once, twice, happily.
Somewhere a dog shakes its entire philosophy onto a porch and is forgiven.
You take the long way home, not out of avoidance, but out of gratitude.
Roofs steam like thoughts cooling down. A single sunbeam breaks through the
blanket and lays a gold bookmark on 3 chimneys and a satellite dish.
You fly through it and collect a minute of warmth you'll find later inside your elbow.
You circle your block once for the sheer completion of circles.
The tomato plant still stands like an optimist. The rosemary still attempts to be a tree. The small chair at the far end of the roof still looks like the right place to say something true and then decide not to say it.
You descend slowly, not to tease the landing, but to give your body time to change keys. Knees soften, ankles remember. The ground rises to meet you with its old competence.
You arrive not like a package, but like a person returning inside.
Oh, towel for the muck. A soft shirt you love beyond reason. The sink hums its small metal hymn under hot water. You hung back. You write a line in your notebook that is not a to-do but a to remember. Rain teaches the city to speak softly to itself. Air agrees. So do I. You draw a tiny crow beside it. Grading the day with a B+, that means in crow, evening will come.
And maybe you'll go up again for the streetlight halos and the secret glow of windows. Or maybe you'll stay in and let your muscles keep the memory without adding new pages. Either way, today you flew in rain, and rain flew in you, and the ordinary world stayed ordinary in the way that makes it holy. Bread still bread, soup still. Soup, you still, you just slightly shinier around the edges, like a stone that has been in a pocket all day, warmed by a person who remembered to carry it.
Weekend light has a different posture. It leans on the windowsill, laces its fingers, and says, we don't have to be anywhere fast. You answer by tying your shoes a little slower and checking your zips with the dignity of a person who has learned the zipper gospel the kindly hard way. The sky looks easy washed, pale, the blue of a favorite shirt that's been honest about being washed 30 times.
You step outside, tilt your chin, and lift as if you were stepping onto a moving walkway that the air has rolled out just for you. You choose the long street that becomes the short bridge that becomes the first line of fields beyond the city.
At mid-roof height, the morning spell changes clothes. Brick heat, bus breath, and bakery sugar fade into cut grass, damp soil, and that high sweet note hay sings when it remembers the sun. You let your pace be the sort a sentence uses when it
knows where it's going, but enjoys its commas. Gardens thin. Then allotments appear patches of stubborn hope with cabbage that looks like planets and scarecrows that look like retired philosophers. You nod to a woman in rubber boots who lifts a watering can as if to christen the day. She looks up, laughs with all her teeth, and goes back to the ritual of making tomatoes happen against the odds. over the canal. You drop until the water is a mirror that has decided to learn cursive.
Mallards leave stitched signatures in their wake.
A barge drifts with dignified certainty, chimney puffing a polite paragraph of smoke.
You ride the canal's cool ribbon for a while because it knows all the easiest ways through the world.
Bridges arrive like softened arches of thought stone, then iron, then the new footbridge with the silly lime paint that makes everyone kinder when they cross it. You duck the lowest lintel, even though you don't need to, because courtesy is habit now. And the habit makes you feel like part of the furniture in the best way. Past the last row of houses, the wind stops consulting buildings and starts telling its own stories. It's not rude, it just remembers the language of distance. You angle your shoulders to match its grammar. A lark rises fast and keeps rising until the idea of height runs out of numbers. Its song is the sound a joy makes when it has nowhere
to put itself and choose its air. You don't chase it. You match a lower path over hedges bristling with blackberries that will happen in a month.
The leaves are already rehearsing.
Cows stand like punctuation in a field that the sun has underlined. One lifts its head, measures you without prejudice, and returns to being exactly itself in the way only cows can manage. There's a windbreak of poplars that makes its own weather a russet hush, a green glittering, a repeating shiver that starts at ankle height and climbs to the top leaves like someone ran a silk scarf up a spine. You slide along that edge and listen with your shoulders. Somewhere a tractor coughs into confidence. Somewhere a dog announces to a wider world that it exists and that existence is thrilling. You feel both announcements go through you like distant
bass. You glide toward a small hill with a copse on its crown because every landscape keeps a secret in that shape. At the top, you don't land. You circle once, twice, 3 times. The way a thought circles a conclusion it isn't in a rush to arrive at. The view seems brand new even if you've seen it. City like a rumor on the horizon. A church spire poking the sky with one dignified finger. A train cutting a silver seam through the far meadow and stitching towns together with time. You hover
long enough to hear the train's soft iron syllables arrive. Where from, where to, and then let them pass. You won't be on it.
Not because you're better than trains, but because today the sky asked first. Lunch is the kind of plan that doesn't
need a clock.
You remember the thermos you tucked into your pack and the 3 biscuits you told yourself were survival rations.
You pick a lane of air above a dry stone wall, descend until your toes could touch if they wanted to, and sit without sitting, hips doing the held in place, knees soft, the body remembering perch. Tea in the sky tastes like it has earned a view.
Steam writes a brief letter to your face. You read it, and the letter says only yes. The biscuits are exactly enough.
Crumbs fall and become currency in a very small economy. A robin arrives because the robin knew you'd be generous before you did.
I admire your punctuality. You tell it. The robin awards you one bright look and a tiny footnote of song. You try a new thing, flying low over a hedgerow with the patience of a bee. The smells become chapters hawthorn, nettle, crushed mint where a fox has passed, the mineral cold of a shaded ditch, the soft sharpness of distant apples.
Bees do not notice you because bees have a union, and the union respects only flowers.
And weather. You let them work and borrow their pace. When the lane dips through a stand of pines, the world becomes cathedral cool and resin sweet.
You inhale and your ribs make space the way cupboards do when guests come over who are family. You cross a narrow road where 2 cyclists are telling a story with uneven breath. You hover well above, but you can still hear the way one says the word ridiculous with the glee a person uses when trying to keep a complaint from ruining a good day.
A sheepdog in a pickup regards you with professional curiosity and adds you to its mental map of beings that might someday become sheep. You promise silently never to try. The dog accepts the promise with a blink that says it will audit later. Wind turbines appear white quills writing weather on the sky. You circle one wide enough to be respectful. The low, jointless hoomph of the blades is soothing in a way
that feels unexpected and inevitable.
Everything large and patient has that sound if you listen close enough. A ferry's engine heard through its hull. A city sleeping. Your own blood on days when you stop pretending you're a machine. You pass and the sound goes with you for a minute like a friendly echo. Beyond the turbines, the land drops to a marsh stitched with reed and mirror. The egg cools again. The smell turns to salt and peat and the secret sweetness water keeps for those who ask nicely. Waders commute on comically delicate legs.
A heron folds its whole improbable self into the shape of a thrown spear and changes ponds without touching anything but intention.
You keep your distance. Marshes are all edges, and you don't wish to collapse one. From here, you can see weather negotiating with itself on the horizon, a small shower rehearsing, a wedge of sun making promises, a patient bank of cloud explaining that the afternoon
has contracts. You decide to let the contracts happen without your advice. Turning home is not an arrow.
it's a soft wandering toward a direction.
You pick the path of slow thermals rising over sunburnt lane. Step from one to the next like stones across a stream, and let the countryside turn back into town without regret. On the way you commit one good deed so small it almost doesn't.
Qualify. A straw hat has tried to retire in an oak. You stop. Speak to the oak because you speak to things now, and ease the hat down with the care you'd use to lift a sleeping cat from a radiator.
There is no applause.
The wind makes us satisfied.
Sound in the leaves that might just be wind.
You place the hat on the wall where a person-shaped path will find it and go. The edge of town smells greet you like old roommate's tar warming on a roof, garlic getting boiled in a pan, laundry soap naming itself in bright flowers. You pass a school.
Field where a kite sulks and then remembers the point of being a kite.
It rejoices toward the middle of the sky, and you applaud from the side, because some victories you don't join. You witness. A basketball court offers you its own familiar punctuation. Bounce, laugh, the metal note of net. You float by and leave that punctuation intact. Rooftops again. Your tomato plant is still auditioning for glory. The rosemary remains a tiny, ambitious forest.
The chair at the far parapet keeps being the right place to think about telling the truth, and then decide the truth is doing fine without being told.
You make one slow circle of your block, the aerial version of checking your pockets, and the city nods back.
You descend in a spiral that the day learned from shells and ferns, small at the center, generous at the edge. Feet, kneecaps, hips, each part lands in its own time. Like instruments putting themselves away after a concert, no one hurried. Inside is inside. Cool hallway. Soft light. The little scratch of a key finding its thought. You set the thermos in.
The sink, and the sink approves.
You peel off the jacket and it relaxes with a papery sigh. You write 2 lines in your notebook as if you were leaving breadcrumbs for your future. The air beyond the canal knows the word meadow and teaches it to your bones. Be kind to hats. You draw a very small lark with a speech bubble that just says up. If evening invites, you'll go again.
If it doesn't, you won't. And that will be good too.
Today, the countryside and the city braided themselves without tugging. You went to see, not to conquer, and the sky rewarded you with a route you can now find with your eyes closed. Bridge, allotments, canal, poplars, gill, marsh, turbines, back, a necklace of simple beads, a string you can hold when a day forgets its own gentleness.
For now, tea, a slice of bread that tastes like fields, and the low hum of your body agreeing with gravity in the friendliest possible way.
Dusk takes its time tonight, stretching the day like warm taffy until the colors go soft at the edges. Street lamps test their halos one by one, as if the city were lighting candles in a long hallway.
You roll your shoulders, check the faithful, zips like a pilot who prefers kindness to bravado, and let yourself rise.
No shove, no flare, just the familiar yes of air, taking your weight the way a good chair takes a thought. Quietly, completely, you level out at that friendly height where
rooftops have faces and windows are stories told in rectangles. The evening breeze is different from the morning and the noon. It's slower, perfumed with dinners and detergent. A touch of cool metal from balcony rails. You drift along a line of brick and feel the day-stored warmth brush your shins.
Then your knees, like walking past a bakery that bakes sunshine.
The sky above you has learned a new shade, a rinsed cobalt that makes the first star look like a pin gently pressed into velvet. You try a wide turn and discover night routes you
didn't know existed.
There's a lane of air that runs along the ridge lines of terraced houses, a ribbon that stays steady even when gusts fuss at the corners.
There's another that lives over the park, where trees continue conversations they began at noon.
You
can smell their cooler breath, a green hush that slides over your cheeks like a leaf's shadow.
Over the river, the conveyor belt current is slower than in daylight, but more certain, as if the water has appointed the evening to be in charge. Windows
edit themselves as you pass. A kitchen glows with pasta steam and laughter that doesn't need volume to be happy.
A studio light reveals hands making something you can't name yet: clay, fabric, movement, careful hands that look like they're speaking.
A bookshop closes with the ceremony of a small theatre lowering its curtain. You walk high above patios
and balconies, because privacy thins at night, and you've made it a rule to be a neighbour first, a novelty second.
Night's etiquette is written in larger loops and softer angles. The first cool pocket of air surprises you near a tower's shadow. You drop into it for a second, the way you might step into shade on a summer sidewalk, and feel your shoulders.
Sigh.
From a rooftop garden, basil breathes upward like a good rumour.
Someone shakes a pan and the scent of garlic keeps a promise you didn't know you'd been made.
You are not hungry yet, but you smile as if you might remember those smells. When you are above the river, the city writes itself twice, once in lights, once in water.
You float there and become a small underscore.
A barge moves with patient vowels. The footbridge hums with footsteps you can't hear at noon because noon is louder. A cyclist's lamp swings gently as the bike leans into a turn. The reflection
leans with it, practicing balance.
From a restaurant deck comes the soft punctuation of plates, the occasional laugh with a comma in it.
You keep a kind distance and the evening rewards you with the perfect temperature that knows your wrists. If there are clouds, they've learned manners. They don't smother the moon. They drape it, then lift the hem so the light can walk through.
You circle a small one and it becomes a cool hand on your forehead. Then you slip out the other side, damp as a suggestion. The sleeves remember and will mention it later. That's fine.
You've picked the right layer tonight, thin enough to hear the air, warm enough to let your chest stay unhurried. Birds at night are a different union. Swifts draw precise stitches in the last light.
A bat appears and redraws the corridor with
fast cursive you can't read and don't need to.
A goal differs like a paragraph that's already decided its ending.
Somewhere a crow checks the ledger of your straps and gives you a silent "be progress noted." You salute the invisible board
and promise to file your report. A drone whirs far off. A private moon for someone's camera.
You turn away without fuss.
Skies are a shared kitchen and you prefer not to bump elbows.
A red beacon blinks from a mast and you adjust your line as if nodding to a doorman. You think again how flight real, gracious flight isn't about
taking space. It's about shaping yourself to the spaces that already exist. You are a guest with good socks. You practice slow altitude changes, just a floor or two, like using stairs inside the air. Up to the level where rooftop pools glow aquamarine and murmurs drift like steam.
Down to the level where laundry lines become flags and someone's wind chimes spell a tune the night already knew.
Your hands don't steer, your shoulders do. Your knees make micro decisions. Your breath is the agreement everything signs. A rooftop party blooms under strings of bulbs. The light is warm as a memory.
You curve so wide you're barely an idea.
You watch the way friends lean toward soup, toward stories, toward each other, and you realize this is why staying close to the ground is sometimes the bravest height.
Not because spectacle isn't possible,
but because tenderness is, and
it needs room.
You leave them to it, carrying the sound of a cork becoming a tiny star as a souvenir. Later, hunger arrives politely.
You land beside a late-night bakery whose window is a poem about butter.
Inside, the person at the counter makes the face people make when something good is easy. Here you go, still warm.
You eat on a quiet stoop and the pastry flakes decide
to be confetti.
Steam writes small affirmations on your face.
When you rise again, very slowly, you do it the way you stand up from a low couch, spine listening, knees thankful. The sky resets you to buoyant, higher now, but not high.
Enough to see the neighborhoods turn into constellations of themselves. Sports called Orion, supermarket Cassiopeia. The line of taxis a patient Milky Way with door handles for stars. Real constellations arrive too. The early ones Venus pretending to be a secret. A scatter you think you remember the name of and decide not to look up because remembering imperfectly feels more human. A satellite glides like a thought that refuses to blink.
You give it a nod. It does not nod back.
That's all right. You try stillness again. True this time. The trick is to let the city move through you.
You become a listening post.
The noises separate and braid. A late bus's exhale. A child's brief, delighted squeal from an open window. A dog's single authoritative bark. The clink of cutlery. The hush of an elevator you can't see announcing its arrival as a feeling. In the building's bones, your heartbeat slows to match the streetlight cycle.
You have never been less busy and more alive. A small kindness presents itself. A paper lantern has drifted down and tangled on a fire escape.
You consider risk, Choose courtesy, and approach sideways, feet to metal, hand to frame, the way you'd rescue a scarf from a sympathetic bush.
The lantern comes free with a tiny sigh. You fold it as best as a thing made of light can be folded and tuck it by the door downstairs with a note in your head that says, "Found."
There is no applause. The beeps of a reversing van do not intensify. Still, you feel the corridor of night smile. You glide home the long way, because night deserves long ways, over the schoolyard where the day's chalk lingers like pale ghosts of hopscotch, over the corner shop where the bell has rung so many times it must stream in rings, over the tomato plant indefatigable, the rosemary ever the tiny tree, the chair still the right place not to speak.
You spiral down as if unscrewing the lid on a jar of cool air. Foot, breath.
The ground receives you like an old friend,
allowing the full weight of a hug. Indoors, the rituals.
Shoes to the mat, jacket to the hook,
Kettle to the switch. Your phone contains pictures you didn't take, and you're glad of it.
Some nights should live only in muscle and scent.
You write a line for later. Dusk taught the river how to write itself twice. I learned to be punctuation and was not.
Embarrassed, you add a sketch of a paper lantern with a smile that is mostly a curved dot at the window. Steam from your mug fogs a circle that you wipe with the cuff you promised to keep clean. Outside, the city keeps breathing. You breathe with it.
Somewhere, someone you wave to is telling someone else that they saw a person in the air who wasn't in a hurry.
That will be enough for tonight. Not heroics, not headlines, just a softer story that knows how to end lights dim, shoulders unknotted, sky the color of a quiet thought, that waiting with the patience of gravity done right. You turn away, carry
the sky into the room the way you carry a candle, and let it go out only after you do.